I know you and Milhone were buddies in the war, but if you catch up with him, don't let your guard down. Remember, this guy's a killer.
Don't worry, Mac.
She answered the phone with her legs, the show that made television history by never showing a woman's face. Richard Diamond, Private Detective, wasn't your typical detective series. It broke rules, hid stars, and turned a radio show into a visual revolution. But behind the fedora and the jazz soundtrack, nothing was simple. The lead actor nearly walked off set. The iconic secretary was played by a future legend who stayed anonymous for years. And one casting decision, it changed TV comedy forever. These are 20 weird facts about Richard Diamond, Private Detective. And the bonus? Let's just say the show's creator had a secret identity of his own. Light a cigarette, pour a drink. This case is about to crack wide open. Number 1. Before David Jansen became Richard Diamond on television, the character lived in a completely different world. Dick Powell created and starred in Richard Diamond, Private Detective, as a radio series starting in 1949, running for 4 successful years on NBC and then ABC. And Powell didn't just voice the character, he embodied him, bringing a smooth, sophisticated charm to the detective who sang to his clients and solved crimes with style. The radio show was groundbreaking, featuring Diamond as a former cop turned private eye who operated out of New York City, solving cases while crooning standards between the action. Powell's performance was so definitive that when 4-Star Productions decided to adapt the show for television in 1957, they faced an impossible challenge. How do you replace the man who created the role? Powell was too busy running 4-Star Productions to star in the series himself, so they had to find someone who could capture that same cool, jazz-inflected detective energy. The search wasn't easy. They needed someone young enough to handle the action scenes, but sophisticated enough to sell the suave personality. Someone who could wear a suit like armor and throw a punch like poetry. Enter David Jansen.
Oh, hi, Rick. Do you know where I can find Jack Milhone?
Number 2. David Jansen almost said no. When 4-Star Productions offered him the role of Richard Diamond in 1957, Jansen was hesitant, borderline resistant. He'd been working steadily in television and film since the late 1940s, bouncing between westerns, dramas, and bit parts that never quite stuck. He was tired of being the guy who showed up, said his lines, and disappeared into the background of someone else's story. The Richard Diamond role felt like more of the same, another detective in a crowded field of television gumshoes. But Dick Powell personally called Jansen and made him an offer he couldn't ignore. Not just the role, but creative input, a chance to shape the character beyond what the scripts provided. Powell promised Jansen freedom, the space to bring his own energy to Diamond's world. Jansen still wavered until he read the pilot script and saw something different. This wasn't just another private eye show. It had style, rhythm, a jazz heartbeat that set it apart from the standard crime procedurals flooding the airwaves. So, he signed on with one condition. If the show felt wrong, if it turned into just another paycheck gig, he'd walk. Powell agreed, and just like that, David Jansen became Richard Diamond, the role that would define his career long before The Fugitive ever made him a household name.
Starring David Jansen.
Number 3. The most famous character on Richard Diamond, Private Detective, never showed her face, not once. Sam, Diamond's secretary and confidant, appeared in nearly every episode, but audiences only ever saw her from the waist down, legs crossed at the desk, heels clicking across the office floor, hands dialing the phone or pouring coffee. That was it. No face, no full body shots. Just legs that became more famous than most actresses' entire careers. The decision wasn't a gimmick from the start. It was a creative solution to a practical problem. The producers wanted Sam to feel like a mysterious, almost mythical presence in Diamond's life. Someone who grounded him, but never overshadowed him. By limiting what viewers could see, they turned her into something more intriguing than any traditional secretary character could be. But there was another reason, a bigger one. The show was operating on a tight budget, and paying for a full-time actress to sit at a desk and deliver lines meant less money for guest stars, locations, and action sequences. So, they hired different actresses to play Sam's legs in different episodes, depending on who was available and who fit the wardrobe. It was rotating casting for a non-speaking, faceless role. And somehow, it worked. Sam became iconic, not despite the limitation, but because of it. Number 4. Among the women who played Sam's legs was a young actress named Mary Tyler Moore. She was 23 years old, unknown, and desperate for work when she auditioned for Richard Diamond in 1959. The casting call was simple: attractive legs, professional demeanor, willing to work for scale. Moore showed up, crossed her legs, answered an imaginary phone, and got the job on the spot. She appeared in multiple episodes during the show's final season, though no one knew it was her. There were no credits for Sam, no acknowledgement, just a paycheck and a chance to be on set. Moore later said it was one of the strangest jobs of her career, sitting behind a desk while the camera framed everything from her hips down, delivering her lines to the actors she could barely see. But she took it seriously because she needed the work, and because even in a role this limited, she found ways to make it interesting. The way she crossed her legs, the rhythm of her movements, the small gestures that gave Sam personality without a face. Years later, after the Dick Van Dyke Show and the Mary Tyler Moore Show turned her into a television legend, people would ask if she ever resented playing a pair of legs. She'd laugh and say no, because even then, even voiceless and faceless, she was learning how to own a scene. Number 5. Richard Diamond's office wasn't just a set, it was a statement. While other detective shows filled their offices with clutter, case files, and the visual chaos of a busy investigator, Diamond's space was sleek, modern, almost minimalist. Clean lines, mid-century furniture, a jazz record player in the corner, and a bar cart always stocked with top-shelf whiskey. It didn't look like a detective's office. It looked like a bachelor pad designed by someone who read Playboy for the articles. And that was exactly the point. Dick Powell wanted Richard Diamond to feel different, not just another hard-boiled detective drowning in cynicism and cigarette smoke. Diamond was smooth, cultured, someone who appreciated good music, good booze, and good company. The office reflected that. It was designed by art director Frank Hodling, who'd later work on classic shows like Star Trek and The Wild Wild West. And he understood that in television, environment tells story. Diamond's office said he was successful but not corporate, sophisticated but not pretentious, dangerous but refined. The set became so iconic that 4-star Productions kept it standing long after the show ended, repurposing it for other series, and even renting it out to other studios. But everyone who walked onto that set knew where it came from. It was Richard Diamond's world, and everyone else was just visiting. Number 6. The show had a secret weapon that set it apart from every other detective series on television: music. Not just background scoring, but live jazz woven into the DNA of every episode. Richard Diamond didn't just solve crimes, he lived them to a soundtrack that felt more like a nightclub than a police procedural. The show's composer, Pete Rugolo, was a jazz legend who'd worked with Stan Kenton and arranged for Nat King Cole, and he brought that pedigree to Diamond's world. Every episode featured original jazz compositions, cool, moody, with a West Coast sound that made even the darkest scenes feel smooth. But here's the weird part. Diamond himself was supposed to sing. In the original radio show, Dick Powell's Diamond would break into song during cases, crooning standards to charm clients or soothe witnesses. When the TV version was being developed, the producers debated keeping that element. Should David Janssen sing? They tested it in early rehearsals, and while Janssen could carry a tune, it didn't translate. On radio, a singing detective felt natural. On television, it felt forced, almost silly. So they dropped it, but kept the jazz. The music became Diamond's voice in a different way, underscoring his mood, his movement, his whole vibe. And it worked. Audiences didn't need to hear Diamond sing when the entire show already sounded like a ballad. Number 7. David Janssen didn't just act in Richard Diamond, he lived it. During the show's 3-season run from 1957 to 1960, Janssen adopted Diamond's style, both on and off screen. He started dressing in sharp, tailored suits even on his days off, frequenting jazz clubs in Los Angeles, ordering whiskey neat, and carrying himself with the same cool detachment his character projected. Friends said he disappeared into the role so completely that it became hard to tell where Janssen ended and Diamond began. But there was a cost. Janssen was a method actor before method acting became the standard, and he poured everything into every scene. He did his own stunts whenever possible, insisting on authenticity in the fight scenes and chase sequences. He refused stunt doubles for simple fisticuffs, saying the audience could tell when it wasn't really him. This led to injuries, bruises, a broken finger during season 2 that he hid from producers for 3 episodes. He'd tape it up, keep filming, grit through the pain because stopping meant delays and delays meant money. The exhaustion started to show. By season 3, Jansen was running on fumes, shooting 12-hour days, 5 days a week, with barely any time to recover between episodes. The show's pace was brutal, and Jansen bore the weight. He later said Richard Diamond nearly broke him, but it also made him. It taught him how to carry a series, how to be a leading man, lessons he'd use again when The Fugitive came calling. Number 8. The show's cancellation in 1960 had nothing to do with ratings. Richard Diamond was still pulling solid numbers, still earning critical praise, still building an audience. So, why did it end? Money and ego. 4 Star Productions, which produced the show, was co-owned by Dick Powell, and by 1960, Powell was shifting focus to other projects, bigger ventures, feature films. He wanted to move beyond television production, and Richard Diamond, despite its success, wasn't the flagship he needed. At the same time, David Jansen's contract was up, and he was demanding more money, more creative control, and profit participation, things that were uncommon for TV actors in 1960. 4 Star balked. They offered a modest raise but refused the back-end deal Jansen wanted. Jansen stood firm. He'd given 3 years to the role, and he wasn't going to keep doing it without fair compensation. Negotiations stalled, then collapsed entirely. Powell decided it wasn't worth the fight. Rather than recast or restructure, 4 Star simply ended the show. No final episode, no send-off. Just a quiet cancellation announced in a 2-sentence press release. Jansen moved on. The crew scattered, and Richard Diamond, private detective, faded into television history. A casualty not of failure, but of industry mechanics. Sometimes the best shows don't end because audiences stop watching. They end because the people making them stop agreeing. Number 9. One of the show's strangest episodes never aired. During season 2, the writers developed a script called The Vanishing Client, a meta-narrative where Diamond takes a case from a woman who claims she's being erased from reality. Photos of her disappear, records vanish, people forget they ever met her. It was ambitious, surreal, almost Twilight Zone territory. David Jansen loved it. He saw it as a chance to push the show beyond its detective formula into something more psychological. They shot the episode in 5 days, and when the dailies came back, everyone knew they'd made something different. Too different. CBS executives watched the rough cut and panicked. They said it was too weird, too confusing, that audiences tuning in for a detective show would be alienated by something this experimental. They demanded reshoots, a simpler narrative, a traditional resolution. Dick Powell refused. He believed in the episode, thought it was some of the best work the show had produced, but CBS held the final say and they made their decision. The episode was shelved, never broadcast, and eventually the film elements were lost. No copies survived, no script archived. Just crew members' memories and a few production stills that surfaced decades later. It became Richard Diamond's ghost episode, the one that almost redefined the series but disappeared just like the client in the story. Sometimes art vanishes before it gets a chance to be seen. Number 10. The show's influence reached far beyond its 3-season run, shaping how future detective series approached style and tone. When Peter Gunn premiered in 1958, just 1 year after Richard Diamond, it borrowed heavily from Diamond's jazz-infused aesthetic and cool protagonist. Blake Edwards, Gunn's creator, openly admitted he was inspired by what Dick Powell and David Jansen were doing. Then came 77's Sunset Strip, Hawaiian Eye, and a wave of detective shows that all carry Diamond's DNA. Sharp-dressed investigators, modern offices, sophisticated atmospheres. But Richard Diamond's biggest legacy wasn't what it inspired in detective shows. It was what it proved about character-driven television. Before Diamond, most TV detectives were defined by their cases, the mysteries they solved. Diamond was different. He was defined by who he was, his style, his manner, his world. The cases almost didn't matter. What mattered was watching this particular man move through them. That shift, from plot-driven to character-driven storytelling, became the template for prestige television decades later. Every modern anti-hero, every complex protagonist, every show that prioritizes character over plot, they all owe something to Richard Diamond. A show that lasted only 3 seasons, but changed the game forever. And if you're enjoying these facts, stick around because we're about to dive into Casting Chaos, a jazz club controversy, and the night the entire crew almost walked off set. Number 11. Behind the scenes, the production operated under constant chaos that somehow never showed on screen. Scripts arrived late, sometimes the morning of shooting. David Janssen would get pages slipped under his dressing room door at 6 a.m. for scenes filming at 9. He learned to memorize fast, digest dialogue while getting into wardrobe, rehearse in his head during makeup. The directors rotated almost every episode, each bringing different styles, different demands. Some wanted multiple takes, others believed in one and done. Janssen had to adjust constantly, reading each director's temperament and adapting his performance accordingly. Guest stars showed up unprepared, having received scripts days late or not at all. One actor admitted he learned his lines in the car, driving to the studio. The crew nicknamed the show Chaos Diamond during season 2, when 3 different directors walked off mid-episode over creative disputes with producers. Yet somehow, when cameras rolled, everything clicked. The episodes looked polished, professional, seamless. It was controlled chaos, barely controlled, but the audience never knew. They saw smooth jazz and smoother detective work, never suspecting the madness behind every frame. Number 12. The show's most controversial episode wasn't controversial for content, but for casting. In season 1's The Blue Mink, Diamond investigates a nightclub murder, and the script called for a black jazz singer as a key witness. This was 1957, and integrated casting in television was rare, often non-existent. Dick Powell insisted on authenticity. If the character was a jazz singer, they'd cast a real jazz singer regardless of network nervousness. They hired actress and vocalist Juanita Moore, who'd later earn an Oscar nomination for Imitation of Life. But CBS affiliates in the South threatened to pull the episode. They said integrated casting violated community standards, that sponsors would revolt. Powell didn't blink. He told the affiliates to do whatever they wanted, but the episode was airing as shot. No cuts, no changes. When The Blue Mink aired, 12 southern stations went dark during that hour, broadcasting local programming instead. But the rest of the country saw it, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. Critics praised the show's courage. Viewers wrote letters supporting the decision, and quietly, it helped crack open a door that other shows would walk through. Richard Diamond didn't solve racism, but it refused to participate in it. Number 13. David Janssen's trademark walk, that slightly hunched, prowling stride that defined Richard Diamond's physical presence, wasn't acting. It was injury. During the filming of the pilot episode, Janssen threw out his back performing a fight scene where Diamond tackles a suspect through a doorway. He landed wrong, felt something pop, and spent the rest of the day in agony. The studio doctor gave him muscle relaxers and told him to rest for a week, but they were on a tight schedule with the network deadlines looming. Janssen couldn't stop, so he adjusted. He started moving differently, favoring his back, hunching slightly to minimize pain, taking shorter, more deliberate steps. The directors noticed and loved it. They thought Janssen had created a signature walk for Diamond, a predatory, coiled movement that made him seem dangerous even standing still. Janssen never corrected them, he just kept doing it, even after his back healed, because it worked. That walk became so associated with the character that when Janssen later played Dr. Richard Kimball in The Fugitive, he had to consciously adjust his physicality to create distance between the two roles. One injury, one accommodation became an iconic character trait that defined how audiences saw Richard Diamond. Number 14. The show's writer's room was a revolving door of future television legends. Blake Edwards wrote multiple episodes before creating Peter Gunn. Aaron Spelling penned several scripts early in his career before becoming a production titan. Even Gene Roddenberry, years before Star Trek, contributed to season 2 under a pseudonym because he was under contract elsewhere. But the room was also a battlefield. Dick Powell wanted sophisticated, dialogue-heavy scripts. that showcased Jansen's ability to charm and think his way through cases. The network wanted action, fights, car chases, visual excitement to compete with westerns dominating the ratings. Writers got caught in the middle, delivering scripts that tried to satisfy both sides and often pleased neither. One writer quit mid-season after his script was rewritten 3 times by 3 different people. Another had a screaming match with Powell over character motivation that ended with both men refusing to speak for weeks. Yet somehow, the scripts kept coming, the episodes kept airing, and the quality remained remarkably consistent despite the chaos. It proved that great television doesn't require harmony. Sometimes it just requires talented people willing to fight for their vision. Number 15. Every episode of Richard Diamond, Private Detective was shot in 6 days with a budget that seemed to shrink weekly. Oh, the production operated lean and mean, reusing sets, locations, even costumes across multiple episodes. Diamond's wardrobe was limited to 3 suits that rotated based on when they could be cleaned. Guest actors wore whatever fit from the 4-star costume department. One actress appeared in the same dress she'd worn on a different 4-star show the week before. The crew became experts at guerrilla filmmaking, stealing shots on city streets without permits, filming in real restaurants during off hours, using available light to save on equipment costs. One legendary episode was shot almost entirely at night because the production couldn't afford to rent lights for day shooting. They just wrote it darker, made it atmospheric, turned limitation into style. The assistant directors learned to shoot fast. Coverage in 3 takes maximum, move on before anyone noticed they weren't supposed to be there. This wasn't prestige television, it was survival television, making something from nothing, week after week. And somehow, those constraints forced creativity that bigger budgets might have softened. Number 16. The final episode of Richard Diamond wasn't written as a finale, because no one knew it was the final episode. Bodyguard aired on September 6, 1960, and ended like any other installment with Diamond solving the case, Sam making a cryptic comment, Jazz playing over the credits. No closure, no send-off, no acknowledgement that this was the end. The cast and crew found out the show was canceled through Variety, reading it in print before anyone from the network or studio bothered to call. David Jansen was reportedly furious, not about the cancellation but about the disrespect of learning through media rather than directly. He'd given 3 years to the role, and they couldn't even give him a phone call. The crew held an impromptu wake at a bar near the studio, drinking to Richard Diamond's memory while the set sat abandoned on the lot. Within days, the office was struck, the props scattered to other productions, the set repurposed. 3 years of work dismantled in an afternoon. Years later, Jansen admitted he never watched the final episode, couldn't bring himself to see how casually it all ended, how little ceremony marked the death of something he'd poured his soul into. Number 17. Richard Diamond's influence on film noir aesthetics and television was profound but largely unacknowledged. While the show aired during the day and was shot for television budgets, cinematographer William H. Clothier brought a noir sensibility to every frame. Deep shadows, dramatic lighting, Dutch angles during tense moments, rain-slicked streets that gleamed under streetlights. He studied the classic noir films of the 1940s and translated their visual language to the small screen, often using techniques television hadn't seen before. Network executives initially pushed back, saying the show looked too dark, too moody, that viewers wouldn't be able to see what was happening on their home sets. Clothier ignored them. He understood that atmosphere was character, that the way Diamond's world looked shaped how audiences perceived him, and he was right. The show's visual style became one of its most distinctive elements, copied by other series, studied by film students decades later. When Twin Peaks and other neo-noir television shows emerged in the 1990s, they were walking a path Richard Diamond helped pave, proving that television could be cinematic. That small screen didn't mean small ambitions. Number 18. One of the show's strangest legacies was its impact on telephone culture. Before Richard Diamond, most television shows treated phone conversations as purely functional, characters picking up receivers and delivering exposition. But Diamond changed that. The show fetishized the telephone. Sam's scenes centered entirely around phone interaction, Diamond constantly using payphones, the rotary dial becoming a recurring visual motif, Cinematographers framed phones artfully, lit them dramatically, turned the simple act of making a call into something almost sensual. This wasn't accidental. Dick Powell believed the telephone represented modern American life, connection and isolation existing simultaneously. He pushed writers to make phone scenes matter, to give them weight and style. The result was a show where telephonic communication became part of the visual language, where a ringing phone carried as much tension as a drawn gun. Cultural historians later noted that Richard Diamond helped establish telephone aesthetics in media, the way phones were shot, framed, and utilized dramatically. Every show that's ever made a phone call cinematic, from The Sopranos to Breaking Bad, owes something to Richard Diamond's obsession with rotary dialing. Number 19. David Jansen's post-Diamond career was haunted by the role in ways he never expected. When The Fugitive launched in 1963, just 3 years after Diamond ended, Jansen brought the same intensity, the same cool determination. But he also brought the weight of being typecast. Casting directors saw him as the smooth detective, the guy in the suit with the jazz hands. He had to fight to convince people he could play a desperate man on the run, someone stripped of Diamond's sophistication and control. He later said, killing Richard Diamond psychologically was the hardest preparation for The Fugitive, unlearning the smooth moves, the easy charm, finding rawness underneath. But he never stopped being grateful for Diamond. In interviews throughout the 1960s and 70s, he always acknowledged that without Richard Diamond, there would be no Dr. Kimball, no career, no legacy. The role that almost broke him also made him, teaching him how to carry a series, how to be a leading man in an industry that chewed up and spit out actors who couldn't handle the pressure. Richard Diamond was his education, his proving ground, his foundation. Number 20. The show's complete absence from streaming services and home video for decades created a generation of television historians who knew Richard Diamond only through legend and scattered clips. Unlike other classic detective shows that found second lives in syndication and later on DVD, Diamond remained stubbornly unavailable. Rights issues, music clearances, and corporate ownership transfers locked the series in a vault where it couldn't be monetized or distributed. Fans traded bootleg recordings, passed down from VHS to digital files, keeping the show alive underground. Film preservation groups listed Richard Diamond as culturally significant but endangered, episodes deteriorating in storage while legal battles prevented restoration. It wasn't until the 2000s that some episodes began appearing sporadically online, often in poor quality, but available. The irony of a show about a detective solving mysteries becoming itself a mystery, lost to bureaucracy and neglect, wasn't lost on fans. A series that pioneered so much, that influenced everything from Peter Gunn to modern noir television, nearly disappeared entirely because nobody could agree on who owned what. Television history preserved by accident and obsession rather than intention. Bonus fact: Dick Powell's secret wasn't just that he created Richard Diamond, it was why. Powell had been a song and dance man, a musical star in 1930s. Hollywood who desperately wanted to be taken seriously as a dramatic actor and director. He reinvented himself in the 1940s, taking tough guy roles, producing films, building four-star productions into a powerhouse. But he never forgot being dismissed, being seen as just a crooner in a tuxedo. When he created Richard Diamond for radio, he was creating the character he wished he could have played in his prime. A man who could sing and fight, charm and intimidate, be sophisticated without being soft. The television version was his final statement, proving that you could make serious drama without abandoning style, that jazz and violence could coexist, that being smooth didn't mean being weak. That Powell died in 1963 at age 58, just 3 years after Richard Diamond ended. He never got to see how his show influenced television for decades. But in every detective who wears a suit like armor and moves through danger with grace, Dick Powell's vision lives on. Richard Diamond was his legacy, a character who proved you didn't have to choose between being cultured and being dangerous. You could be both, and that made you unforgettable.